my name is Julie Everhart, and I'm going to be analyzing the weather and climate in Kodiak, Alaska during the week of September 9th through the 16th, as well as the week of the 28th of October through the 4th of November. Today is the 9th of December, and I'm doing my observations for Unit 15 as part of ATM 101, and all my TV weather maps, as well as my graphs delineating the temperatures, dew points, and relative humidity were all provided as part of the unit. So taking a look here at our surface air temperature graph, I'm going to be focusing primarily on the 10th of September as well as the 15th of September, which are both these columns here. The National Weather Service's temperature recordings are indicated by the red line, while the maximum daily temperature for the site location is this dotted line with the white circles, and then the minimum is this dotted line with the white circles, while the average climate for that site is going to be the solid black line and solid black dots. The maximum daily temperature recorded for the 10th was 52 degrees Fahrenheit, with the minimum being 35 degrees Fahrenheit. And so that mean daily temperature was at about 43.5 degrees Fahrenheit. The warmest time of the day, at least to the nearest quarter, based on the National Weather Service, was just about noon. And you can kind of see that here located. This is 12 a.m., 6 a.m., and then this is about noon, and that's where that warmest temperature is. And again, that warmer temperature was at about 52 degrees Fahrenheit. The coldest time of day was at about 6 a.m., which is this big drop here, so it's a pretty solid indicator there of those temperatures. And the maximum dailies, looking at the 15th, which again is this column here, we're looking at just about this one, which is 55 degrees Fahrenheit with a minimum of 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And those took place at between about 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. I couldn't really decide which one was the warmest time of day. It was just about here, and so I was kind of taking that mark in between and kind of chose either or. And then the coldest time of the day was at about 6 p.m., which again is indicated by that little marker right there. The climate average daily temperature for the 10th was 51 degrees Fahrenheit, while the temperature range difference between the max and the min was 17 degrees Fahrenheit. So now I'm going to take a look at the humidity graph that was provided. This one shows both the dew point temperatures as well as the relative humidity. And all of these recordings were from the same week, the 9th through the 16th. And again, I'm going to focus primarily on the 10th and the 15th just because those were part of the worksheet that we already filled out. The blue line, as indicated pretty clearly here, represents the dew point for that week, and the maroon-ish looking line here is the relative humidity for that week. The maximum dew point temperature on September 10th I recorded at 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is marked right about here. And the minimum dew point temperature for that day, which again September 10th, was 32.5 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum relative humidity for that day was located about 90%. You can kind of see here it's pretty darn high up here. And again, what first got me a little bit confused was looking at the scale. So this scale indicates for the dew point temperature, while the scale is for percentages. So kind of reading across the board here, you can see it's about 90% for that maximum for that day. The minimum for September 10th was 55%, and the most humid time of day to the nearest hour for the relative humidity was about 6 a.m. Looking at the least humid time of day for that particular moment in time, I located it being at about noon, and again that's for September 10th. And the most humid time of the day to the nearest quarter on the 10th was about 6 a.m. The least humid time of day to the nearest quarter for dew point, the last one was also for dew point, was about 6 p.m. And the dew point for the 15th for that maximum was 52.5 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum dew point was 45.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, those are both for the 15th. And the maximum relative humidity and the minimum relative humidity for September 15th was 95% and 80%. And those recordings for the most humid time of day was at about 6 p.m. And the least humid time of day was at about 6 a.m. And the most humid for the dew point was at about 6 p.m. And the least humid for the dew point was at about 6 a.m. I felt that these measurements were relatively accurate, especially based on the time of day. With my experience, for the most part, I see dew more often in the morning in the earlier morning hours with those cooler temperatures, and so it's going to be easier to develop some dew when it's during those lower points, and so that's why that lower point for the temperature is located there. And then also with the sorry, and with the relative humidity for those temperatures, it's going to be more likely to show some precipitation or show some humidity in those earlier morning hours, since it is a lot easier for dew to form in those earlier hours. And just one more point to note on this particular week, as you can see with the dew point relations here on the graph as well as the relative humidity, they go hand in hand with one another, so when there are these spikes in the dew point temperature recordings, there's also going to be a spike in the relative humidity possibilities. So at this point for this day, for example on September 11th, with the temperature being just above 50 degrees, at that point we're looking at a relative humidity of about 100%. Meaning that it's incredibly likely for that particular day for there to be some form of precipitation. So now I'll move on to the week of October 28th, and the 4th of November. The lines are being indicated by the same forms here. So for example, the red line indicates the recordings from the National Weather Service for those days. Starting on October 28th and from our worksheet, the National Weather Service's maximum daily temperature recording was 45 degrees Fahrenheit, with the minimum being at 27 degrees Fahrenheit, which brings the mean daily temperature, which is the average of the max and min, to about 36 degrees Fahrenheit. The warmest time of the day that I could see was about 6 o'clock in the evening, and the coldest time of the day was about 6 o'clock in the morning. And then we'll move on to October 31st, which was Halloween. The National Weather Service's maximum daily temperature was 31 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum was 26 degrees Fahrenheit. So that day showed a bit cooler temperatures and had an average temp of quite a bit cooler with 28.5 degrees Fahrenheit. The warmest time of the day for that particular day, based on the National Weather Service's data, was just about high noon. And the coldest time of the day, based on that data, was about 6 o'clock in the morning. So that one kind of paralleled with the few days prior there on the 28th of October. The maximum daily temperature recorded by the National Weather Service on the 2nd of November was 45 degrees, and the minimum was at about 38 degrees. So those days showed a lot warmer temperatures, and it had an average daily temperature of about 41.5 degrees for that particular section of time. The warmest time of the day to the nearest quarter based on that data I recorded at about noon, and the coldest time of the day was actually later in the evening, so that proved opposite of those other days that we had recorded. That was the 28th and the 31st. And the coldest time of the day for that particular day was about 6 o'clock in the evening. So the climate's average daily temperature for the 28th is 37 degrees, which brings a daily temperature range for the 28th to be at about 11 degrees Fahrenheit. So then moving on to the humidity graphs for the particular week of the 28th of October through the 4th of November, the dew point temperature on the 28th of October was recorded at about 24 degrees Fahrenheit. On the 31st, it was at 12 degrees Fahrenheit, and then on the 2nd of November, it was at 33 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's pretty relative here through the map that you can kind of see how those dew points and the humidity fluctuate through that time. So here we have on the 28th, and then moving on to the 31st, where it just sort of leveled off and got a bit cooler during that particular time, and then it started to warm up again here on the, on the 2nd. And again, those increased temperatures led to the higher recorded levels for the relative humidity as well for the increased temperatures for the dew point. So then taking a look here at Monday, September 10th, there's definitely a strong low pressure system influencing Kodiak here, just kind of on the outskirts. There's a cyclone area here reporting at 994 millibars, with that front moving in from the southwesterly direction, moving towards the island in this particular region. And the bars there reporting at 1008 millibars. So it's not overly affected by it because it's at a higher pressure system, but there's definitely some cloud cover and the storm is starting to kind of head that way. You can kind of see from there that the sky condition affects the daily ranges of temperature, because on that particular day the temperature ranged pretty well, with the coldest temperature recording being at about 35 degrees Fahrenheit, and while at noon it had already risen up to about 52 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is also at the same time when there is the highest dew point and relative humidity recording. So having that cloud cover throughout the day definitely increases those temperatures as the ground area starts to stay warmer. And then just taking a look here at Wednesday, September 12th, there wasn't really a strong high or low pressure affecting Kodiak. It rests right here in this little bubble, which is blocked off by these lines indicating the ending of a pressure system. There's definitely a front moving in throughout it, but it didn't seem to affect the temperatures too greatly for that particular day. If the temperatures had been warmer, then it would have been a cloudier kind of day, as I'd mentioned before, from the 10th, because again, that cloud cover leads to the warmer temperatures from that lower pressure system. And the average temperatures are reflected in the seasonal changes in Kodiak based on the based on just the fluctuation of those systems as they're moving through, and as the temperature begins to decrease, and as does the temperature averages as they begin to move throughout the particular day, with the sun's radiation and the heat heating the ground as it warms up throughout the afternoon. So you'll see those cooler temperatures in the morning and then the increased warmer temperatures by late afternoon with the highest recording for those days. And then moving on to September 15th, we can see this low pressure system here, which is definitely going to have a little bit of an effect on our little island of Kodiak here. With that particular day, the fronts are moving just over that particular region, so there's definitely a strong low pressure system influencing Kodiak. There's some heavy cloud cover on that particular day, and there was a change in the humidity for that day as well. So the dew point recording was at 52 degrees Fahrenheit with the humidity measured off at 95%. So that just goes to show that those warmer temperatures are going to be increasing the possibility of precipitation, and it's also going to be increasing just the overall temperature, so that dew point is at a higher temperature, proving or showing that then there's going to be the possibility and the presence of dew at a warmer temperature. It was most humid that day at 6 p.m. and least humid at 6 a.m., so that does make sense because the ground had time to warm throughout the afternoon on that particular day. And moving on towards Sunday, October 28th, we can take a look here and just sort of see what's going on for that particular time frame. Oh, and also between the 9th and 16th of September, the best way to describe the weather changing in the systems was the initial clear weather, which was followed by the passage of several low pressure systems through the week with constant humidity and cloud cover. So sorry, but moving on to the 28th of October, there was not really a strong high or low pressure system influencing Kodiak. You can kind of see here that there's really not much going on for that particular day. And then moving on to the 31st, there was a weaker lower pressure system influencing Kodiak moving through here, but again we've got these barriers kind of indicating, yeah, that's that pressure system with some snow showers moving forward through there. Taking a look at the 2nd of November, there's definitely a system. There's a strong low pressure system influencing Kodiak's weather. You can see here as it's indicated through the cyclone here with 950 millibars reporting, some definite cloud cover hanging heavy over there. The particular week, that clearer weather resulted in colder temperatures for that particular week, and it started to warm up here on Friday, the 2nd of November, as that storm front started to move in and we started to get some more cloud cover. Of the weather conditions reported for Kodiak for these particular weeks, I'm not entirely sure actually what the weather normally is like in Kodiak, but I kind of took my best guess on this one because it's a maritime region. I was believing that the 10th of September, and I'll kind of scroll back here a bit to that particular TV weather map. So I was thinking Monday the 10th was sort of the best one. It's being influenced here by our lower pressure system, but it's not being completely berated by that particular storm there in the northwest region of Kodiak, or by Kodiak. But again, those temperature variants were pretty solid throughout the day, with the temperature in the morning being 35, with the highest temperature being around noon in the 50s, and those seem like some pretty decent averages for that particular region for this time of year. I believe that's pretty much all that I have to report on. Other than that, I think I'm about done, and I'm having a horrible closing, but thank you so much for everything, and I hope that you have a great rest of your week and a great holiday break. Thanks.